It has been an emotional month of doing not much besides reading, which is just like a common theme in my life. A few of the books I've been reading since I got back to LA are some of those modern gay classics that I missed out on from being a child, a few spooky-ish books, and then some new releases that have done a number on me. So I have some homemade caramel corn here. Thank you, parents, for sending me a care package. I'm going to paint my nails this silver glitter and tell you why I hate myself through my book selection, but also why I have great taste and have read mostly 5-star books this month. There is a lot to talk about, so I think we just do it. Me 10 years into making videos, like, I think I'll just start. The first book I want to talk about is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So many people recommended this book, not even specifically to me, just when it came out, and it sounded awesome. So I picked it up and started reading it. It is pretty decently long. The audiobook version is 17 hours, which is like double the average length. And yet, I usually don't feel this way, but I wish I could just read that book all day, every day. The experience of reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, it's my first V.E. Schwab book ever. And I'm just like, are they all like this? Are they all this good? And just... I mean, I don't usually read books that are that intricate and epic and not, you know, just like sad gay people walking around their block. And I'm sad that it's over. I went through a true mourning period for that book. If you are still unfamiliar, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue follows kind of two storylines. One is 2014 New York, where we meet Addie LaRue and quickly learn that people forget about her after they meet her, which is a bad way of explaining it, is she has this curse from a deal she made. You meet her, you can have a conversation with her, but then once she's out of your sight, you forget that you have met her, and she has lived this way for 300 years. The other storyline we follow is 1714 France, where she is longing for more time and freedom in her life. She makes a bad deal with let's call it the devil, God who answers after dark, and starts this new life where she doesn't age, she moves through time, no one remembers when they meet her, her family forgets about her, and that is an adventure in and of itself that we follow, where in 2014, New York, she's traveled the world at this point, and one day steals a book from a bookstore where this guy, Henry, is working, and she comes in later trying to return that book because, you know, she has all these tricks, people forgetting about her all her life and not being able to make any money. But this time, he remembers her. I thought a little bit about like how far to go in describing it because so much of it is just like leading up to that happening, but then that is really where the party starts. I think that's as much as the synopsis gives away. I did not read the full synopsis before starting to read the book, which I'm so glad I did, and all I knew was that she moves through the world and people can't see her. I didn't even get it yet. This book is ridiculously good. Not only is the plot just fire, the writing is gorgeous. The sentences are like plot-related sentence and then just beautiful, descriptive imagery back and forth. Not to mention, the characterization is A+. The way the two storylines are weaved together, flawless. Once we meet Henry, we start to follow him a little bit more and learn that he's bisexual, and so is Addie. So like two bisexual love interests made me not even mind that the love story was straight. Because it's so much more than that. Henry has an ex who is a guy also, so I don't know. There's a lot going on with queerness in this book, and it made it so enjoyable for me. But as we start following Addie's life, the themes of it feel also like very 2020. This book is for those people who have dreams of just like, I don't know, quitting your day job, or like if you feel like you're in a life that you didn't sign up for and you want to just go travel and do your own thing, create your art. That is exactly the place that Addie is in at the beginning. She makes this deal where she has all the time in the world, but is unable to leave an impact. No one can remember her. She won't even show up in photos. So it's this big existential question about living well. Henry has a tattoo that says live well. What do you do with the life that you have all of these important questions. The writing, though, truly is what will stand out to me. And like, please tell me if you're a V.E. Schwab fan. I have not read any of her dozens of books. I know she has so much YA. She has other adult books. This one I just totally randomly picked up. I went to grab Tower of Nero when it came out, and Addie LaRue just like was screaming my name. It's so ridiculously good. If you were on the fence about reading it, like, I can't recommend it enough. Such an epic novel. I want to see it as a 10-part Netflix show. Oh my god, it would be so good. I want to watch the adaptation of this book. I just can't even wrap my head around what I experienced reading this book. It's so ridiculous. Okay, I finished an entire hand, but I'm gonna go back around. Oh, and I'm fucked up right here. The next book I want to tell you about that I read this month is Cleanness by Garth Greenwell. This book came out in January, and I heard about it then, and I had just read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous in January, and I was like, the covers look exactly the same, like the black and white dramatic image. Seems like very similar books, and I don't want to read them back to back, so I just like filed it away, and this month it finally felt right, and I was so correct. I can't even tell you the experience I had reading this book. It was my first week living back in LA, a tumultuous week in my personal and work life. Every night I would put on Juliana Barwick music, light some incense. I became an incense factory in my bedroom in October. You can ask my roommate, he hates me. And I would read one chapter per night for 9 nights. And just like truly a spiritual experience doing that. This is one of those books that I feel like for me made me a better writer. Garth Greenwell goes the extra mile in describing things and describing his experiences. It is just like one of those books that I feel like will shape me as a writer. For example, this isn't something that I like took, but something that I loved and you wouldn't think works but just does is anytime there's dialogue, there's no quotation marks, there's no like new paragraph for the dialogue, it's all just in the paragraph, so it becomes very continuous. I mean, some paragraphs would go on for 2 pages, which sounds like a nightmare for me, someone who usually has a very short attention span with reading books. And it wasn't. I would fly through these 30-page chapters. It's hard to describe what exactly it's about. There are 9 individual stories split up into 3 sections of slightly more specific themes, but not really. So 3 sections, 3 chapters each. And it's this queer narrator living in Bulgaria. You assume he's in his 30s. First-hand accounts of very specific stories, things he goes through. 2 of them are like majorly explicit sexual stories. They all deal with queerness in some way. All of them are just like absolutely stunning. Just a masterclass in detail and almost like personal essays. It took me back to reading Alexander Chee's essays in How to Write an Autobiographical Novel. It's like, this is the autobiographical novel. I mean, it's kind of just one of those things where if you were to ask me what my taste in books is, like to describe it in 5 books, this would be one of them. Hands down. If you haven't read this book and you don't know that much about it, I would say if you were a fan of Andre Acimon's writing style, there is some of that there. The super detail of it, the stream of consciousness. I could not recommend this book highly enough. And I would also recommend reading it the way that I described. You don't have to do the incense or the Juliana Barwick music, but to read it over 9 days and just give yourself like 1 chapter or story at a time, because it is something that I think you should pace out and not just devour. Obviously do what you want, but I found that to be the right way for me because it let each story sink in. And now that the whole book has sunk in, I think if I would have devoured it, I wouldn't remember so many specifics from individual stories. The one about falling in love, being on a date, going to a protest, his last night in Bulgaria. Garth Greenwell has another book called What Belongs to You that came before this one, and I definitely want to read it now, but probably not till like next year. I don't want to compare them that closely. One very trusted friend told me he liked Cleanness more. Another very trusted friend told me he liked the other one more, so these are the stressful decisions. If you've ever read a queer book because of me, please let this be the next one. The next book I want to tell you about is Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender. I've been pronouncing their name Kacen in all my videos leading up to this one, and thank you no one for correcting me. This must be one of the best YA books of 2020. Felix Ever After follows a trans teenager living in New York who's never been in love and really wants to be in love. His name is Felix Love. At the beginning, Felix experienced some intensely transphobic messages, and someone kind of puts up a poster of his dead name and an old picture of him, and it's just like not a good situation. But on the good side, Felix has a decent group of friends, including an awesome best friend Ezra and a classic high school enemy named Declan. I loved reading this book because of the uniqueness that an own voices story like this gives you. Seeing Felix getting a T-shot, still struggling with his identity after starting to transition. All such real things that you would not get from a cis person writing this story. And it's also, you know, when it's good, it's good. It's like such a feel-good book sometimes that deals with that really real stuff. I need to do a second coat so bad. This book is so adorable, and I absolutely flew through it in less than a week. I want to like curl up with this book again and again. Look at them. Actually don't. The next book I have to tell you that I read is Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This is a Pulitzer Prize winning gay book from 2017 that I missed out on from being a child. And a friend slash coworker recommended this book to me. Or she actually didn't. She just told me she was reading it. I looked into it. I was like, wait, what is this? How do I thought I knew a lot about queer books, but I missed this one. Won the Pulitzer, but missed it. Less is narrated by someone we don't know who it is, but it's in third person about Arthur Less, who is 49 years old, is a moderately successful novelist, to put it generously. Gets a wedding invitation from his ex, who's marrying someone else. So he decides to plan a big extravagant trip around the world, saying yes to all these random rinky-dink literary festivals, yes to teaching class, starts saying yes to things in books himself, a nice little trip around the world. So all the chapters become his adventures traveling the globe, and also we learn about his past relationships and just what it's like to be Arthur Less. I mean, just from the first chapter of this book, like the first chapter is really something else. There's this one part where Arthur Less is thinking he is the first gay man to grow old because, you know, he's approaching 50 quickly, and the generation before him, so many of them died of AIDS and did not get to grow old and tell their stories. That hit me hard because I think about that generation who I know a very good amount of them, and I felt like it gave me an insight into them because I see them as my mentors. I never think about how they missed out on that. That was one of those moments early on in the book where I was like, this is gonna rock my world. And it kind of did. Kind of didn't. If the way I just described it like makes it sound interesting to you and you're thinking, I need to read this book right away, then yes, you should. But the plot becomes, it goes into those chapters, and every chapter he's in a different country. And it was fun, but that part of it didn't do a whole lot for me. But there's probably like 6 or 7 really powerful quotes, themes, lessons that I took from this book that make the whole thing worth it. And it's also very short, so that's a good thing to take from it. Arthur Less obviously is a novelist. The book becomes very meta, how he's working on a book and having trouble selling it because it's just about a sad white gay in San Francisco walking around the block being sad about life. He has this epiphany when writing it in the book about how it needs to, change and be funnier, and how he shouldn't take himself so seriously. And it's just very that, like, this is that book. They keep talking about how this book is so funny. I didn't find it that funny. All the themes I took from it were those, like, poignant moments. And I've thought about this a lot, because I'm like, this book won the Pulitzer. There's something I'm missing. But I don't think there is. I think I didn't like the American traveling through world plot of it. I didn't see the need for it, and I probably would have preferred the version that was sadder of him walking around the block in San Francisco being sad and learning those same lessons. There were funny moments, I suppose. If you've read less, I've discussed it with very few people, so I would love to hear your thoughts. I don't remember why, but my favorite chapter was Less in Morocco. So, do with that what you will. The next book I read is a poetry book called Tap Out by Edgar Kunz. One night I just was missing reading Cleanness and wanted to read something that was, I don't know, more poetic and ethereal, and this gave me that. Edgar Kunz is such a beautiful poet, and these poems come together as a collection of stories about his life and growing up and friendship and being working class. My favorite poem is this one called My Father at 49 Working the Night Shift at B&R Diesel. I've read that poem so many times now. I think I had some learning to do about how to approach a book of poetry because I wanted it to have more of a through line than it did, but then once you read it again, it's like you just accept it for how it is. I don't know, it's just so great. The next book I read this month was Dear Justice by Nick Stone. This is the sequel to Dear Martin. It kind of is more of a companion, but you definitely should read Dear Martin first. Follows a character who we meet in Dear Martin, but you gotta read Dear Martin. I read Dear Martin this year in July, quickly requested and got an arc of Dear Justice, which I didn't read. I'm so sorry. I didn't read it until it came out. It's just like a huge theme of my life. Dear Martin is just such a set in stone, grounded story. It's one of those staples of YA books that deal with police brutality. Dear Justice takes it to the next level. With the writing style, the characterization, Nick Stone is like really going for it with the structure, the way the chapters are set up. It feels like every night she had a bottle of wine and just like went to town on this book. She had so much to say and wrote it so poetically and beautifully. It is like the book of a dream. Chapters will be like snapshot and then a chapter and then a letter. And then the font is different. And then the words like start going down the page in slants. Dear Martin had that backbone structure of he's writing letters to Martin Luther King Jr. There's kind of a letter from Nick Stone at the front of how there aren't a lot of books that deal with characters like this. I mean, it follows Quan, who is behind bars and has had a really rough upbringing, and we learn about that. It's just so beautifully done. I'm so grateful to have this. Having met Quan in Dear Martin, this is such a beautiful follow-up. If you read Dear Martin and haven't picked this one up yet, I so encourage you to do so because as a fan of Dear Martin, I loved having this book that like went the extra mile. And if you haven't read Dear Martin yet, hello from several days later. My nails are now chipping off. I wasn't sure. I filmed most of this video in the last week of October, and now I'm coming at you with my last couple of October reads. Halloween week, which already feels like years ago, I finally picked up Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Erin Hicks. Rainbow Rowell wrote the script for the graphic novel, and Erin Hicks gorgeously illustrated it. This is a book that came out last year, and I meant to read it last Halloween and just didn't, which is so pathetic because this book takes 40 minutes to read. It is so short and sweet. A really beautiful story of these two friends working at a pumpkin patch. One is trying to help the other chase down this girl to profess his love, and it is just like a very sweet, nostalgic Halloween, festive fall read. If you like any of Rainbow Rowell's books, this one is worth your time, and again will take 2 seconds to read. More graphic novels, I think, are in my sights for 2021. And the final book I want to talk to you about is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, which I finished on Halloween. I pretty much read this right in line with the timeline of the actual book. I listened to the audiobook, which I recommend. It's kind of a dense YA book. Obviously, it's gotten so much attention this year. It's a National Book Award finalist. Aiden Thomas is a great person to follow online, and this is the first Own Voices trans YA book to hit the New York Times bestseller list, which, holy shit, what a positive thing to happen this year. If you're unfamiliar, this book follows Yadriel, who's determined to prove to his family that he is a brujo. I'm sorry that I sound so white saying every word. He is trans and has a good support system with his friend. Family, it is rocky. So in order to do this, he's trying to summon the spirit of his cousin Miguel, who dies early on in the book, and instead he ends up summoning this other guy who's around his age and who he knows from school. It's kind of like the school's resident bad boy. A lot of the adventure ensues with trying to hide him, releasing his spirit. There's so much that goes down in this book. And also just like so much history to cover. I gave it a solid 4 stars. The best part of the book to me was the characters. That is where it really hit me. But the plot, the pacing, and the romance, I had issues with. I know so many people adore this book, and I see why. And I will definitely be picking up everything that Aiden Thomas ever writes. Really do adore their writing style, and this book leaves you so curious, like what else they have up their sleeve. So that's what I read in October. I had a really great month for the most part. Leave me a comment and let me know what you read this month, what you enjoyed. If you liked any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Tiernan. Links to everything are below. I'll see you so soon.